Hello, ladies and gentlemen. What I have for you right now is a video lecture of Chapter 1 in your textbook covering the introduction. The introduction is only 3 pages long, so it's not a very long chapter, probably the shortest chapter in the textbook. But there are some key points that I do want to kind of cover with you. And so if you'll bear with me as I utilize this new software and kind of get to learn it, we'll see what we can do to cover the high points on Chapter 1. So Chapter 1's introduction is basically kind of giving you an overview of what would we need to consider dealing with the occupational lab. Your author looks at a number of considerations that need to be looked at. Oops. There we go. Starting with an instructor needs to have a couple of things. First and foremost, a level of occupational competency preparation. In their background, in their training, in their experience, in whatever occupation, just fill in the blank, they have got to have some level of mastery skill to be able to teach that course. They have to be able to answer the questions. They have to be able to perform the skills that are necessary. And so you've got to have that when you come to the table. The next thing is a level of instructional competency preparation. That instructor needs to be able to teach. That's what this is simply all about. Being able to work with people, work with students, and to transfer that knowledge to them. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that's an easy thing to do. I've known a lot of people who have incredible amounts of skills, but yet can't teach and don't really have a whole lot of people skills, but yet they are highly skilled, highly competent in their chosen occupational field. But a teacher has to be able to deal with people. Some of the best teachers that I've ever seen are people persons. They can connect with people at all kinds of levels. And once they make that connection, then they can transfer that knowledge to them. And so part of becoming a teacher is getting trained and getting help to be able to transfer that knowledge, knowing about learners, the theory of learning, and in some of your occupational ed courses, you'll talk about that kind of information. But for the vocational teacher, you're basically looking at 2 different things. The skills that that teacher brings based on their time in that occupational area, but also their skills and how to deal with people. And so those are what the first 2 points cover. Now, the author goes on to talk about and look at some comparisons with academic kinds of laboratory situations like chemistry, physics, biology, and things like that. And goes on to mention that academic instructors are usually concerned with communication with students. Students are taught, let's say, a lesson on the vital parts of a frog. All right, they'll learn what parts, the heart, lungs, whatever, is inside of a frog. Then usually what follows is that they go into their lab and they dissect the frog. And they get to see for themselves how everything inside of a frog is put together. I guess they learn some skills in dissection, but normally it's to help them to identify all of those parts. On the other hand, your vocational instructors or occupational instructors communicate the same way. You'll lecture, you'll do all kinds of things with a student in this, say, maybe a classroom or else in an area to kind of get them prepared with all of the knowledge that they got to have to perform some kind of skill. But then they're going to go to that lab and they are going to demonstrate that skill. And they may have to repeat that skill over and over and over and over again. When I taught drafting, I had my students do well over 200 or 300 drawings in basic drafting. Some drawings, they got done correctly the first time. But many drawings, as we began to cover more and more complicated drafting information, they began to struggle, and some of their drawings needed to be redone 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And so when they develop those skills to the point that they pass that chapter or that skill set, they were able to move on to more advanced information. And so your lab is that environment that those students are going to gain those skills, as well as have some knowledge to go along with it. A few more little educational considerations that your author looks at in chapter 1. Instructional methods and educational media instruction are intertwined with lab management and organization. He goes on to discuss really all of the processes that can take place in a lab setting. And certainly we use all kinds of instructional methods like lecture, demonstration, things like that. And we also use various types of media to make that happen. One of the wonderful things that I've been doing for the past semester was to get used to using a smart board, a wonderful piece of educational technology that I highly recommend that everyone get for their labs. They make things so much easier for you to be able to do presentations from a visual, from a auditory standpoint. You've got videos you want to show. Don't need a TV for video player. You just shoot it on the smart board screen. And many of these are high definition. I mean, it's as good as a television monitor. So there's just all kinds of educational technology out there that will help us to do our jobs. But then all of those things there are intertwined, and I like the word there. I probably wouldn't come up with that myself, but they're all kind of intertwined with lab management and organization. You and I need to be able to manage. That means take care of our lab and all the things that encompass that, but yet also have it organized. If I need this piece of equipment, where do I find it? Do I have to wait and hunt for it? Also, how do the various components of my lab all work together? And so all of these things are all have to be considered as we utilize our vocational lab. And probably the most important point of this whole series of points that your author makes: effective lab management techniques are essential for all occupational areas. It doesn't matter if your lab is as simple as mine: 4 rows of tables with 5 PCs on every row. That's it, with chairs and power, and that's it. To a machine shop, or to a welding program, or else maybe a business lab, or maybe a nursing skills lab that'll have all kinds of models, all kinds of high-tech things in them. No matter how simple, how complex, you've got to be able to manage your lab. If you don't, chaos will ensue. And finally, instructional management, planning, organizational, and supervision skills are necessary. Management, planning, organizing, and being able to supervise. These skills are necessary for you and me to be able to effectively utilize our vocational labs or occupational laboratories, whatever you want to call them. You'll hear me use those terms interchangeably. How do we plan our time in the lab? Every day, whether you use it every day or every so many days, there needs to be some planning. What kind of things are going to take place? When are they going to take place? How are they going to take place? And then, how do you manage all those things to set up the environment for those students who need to get some things done? How is that lab organized, that you don't have a bunch of people bunched up waiting for a machine to use? Can you spread them out? Can you organize it so that everybody uses these machines and that they're doing things? Because let's face it, as instructors, we know idle time is just the last thing we want for students. We want them actively engaged, actively learning, and then finally being able to supervise students. And that's just not limited to just watching what they're doing. That's also being engaged with them in the instructional process. So these are the skills that your author wants us to have. And certainly I think he kind of sets the tone in this first chapter about what it is we need to be concerned about. And so that will end our first lecture, and I'll go ahead and end the presentation right now.